Well, after a couple long delays and some demos and a movie and everything being released, Final Fantasy 15 is finally upon us, and how excited was I to pop it in my system. Well, kind of excited. It actually didn't arrive for me today. My shipment from Amazon was delayed a day. I guess UPS was a little bit late delivering this to the post office. For some reason, UPS says, "Here, post office, you finished the job." And the post office said, "Sure, but we're going to get to it tomorrow." So I called up Amazon and said, "Hey, I know this isn't your fault, but is there anything you can do?" And they were good enough to give me a digital download code for the game so I could enjoy it until my physical release came. So I've been playing that today, and it's been wonderful. At first, I thought it was going to be a little overly complicated because, you know, Japanese RPGs of late can be a little complicated, especially when it comes to crafting and that type of stuff. And my favorite Final Fantasies are the ones pretty much 7, 9, and 10, where things are a little simple. It's easier to understand, and of course, Final Fantasy X can get a little complicated when it comes to the whole sphere grid system, but after a while you can kind of get the hang of it. However, Final Fantasy 15 so far seems like it's going to be fairly straightforward and not too overly complicated, especially when you first start the game up and it says it's for, like newcomers and old fans or something like that. So basically there's something for everybody. Initially, I was a bit overwhelmed with what I saw. It seemed like you could pretty much go everywhere and talk to whoever you want and do anything you want, and it might be pretty easy to get lost. But the questing system in it is pretty easy and straightforward. It highlights where you need to go and what you need to do, and you can choose to either do that or go on a side quest. Really, again, your choice. And then you have a car that you get to drive around in as well. Now, it does take fuel, but in the first couple hours that I've played the game, that really hasn't seemed to be an issue. And I also thought the whole mechanic of having a car in a Final Fantasy game is going to be a little, well, say complicated, just to use that word again. But overall, it hasn't been. It's been pretty good as far as the fast travel is concerned. And if you get far away from your car, you can just go to a road and call it to you. Of course, it costs about $100 to do that, in-game currency anyway. But even still, that's pretty cheap. The game tends to throw money at you pretty regularly. One thing that I found interesting was the leveling up system, in which you go and you battle monsters and you do quests and you do all these other things that earn you experience, and they kind of go into this little experience bank. And it's not until you stay at either a camp which you build, or find an inn or some random trailer on the side of the road, and you sleep in it. And then overnight, all that experience in your experience bank, you finally get to cash in and level up. And then there's a sphere grid type system, except that you get to purchase upgrades and such using these ability points that you earn, and it's broken up into different tiers as far as like combat and recovery and strategies and teamwork and all that. So the leveling up system, I think, is pretty streamlined. First going into it, there seems to be a lot of options, but if you take the time to go through all those different categories and read the options and see what type of upgrades are available, you can really tailor the character to who you want it to be. And it's not that complicated at all. It's actually fairly straightforward, and it seems like it'd be pretty easy to build the type of character that you want. And speaking of the character, you start off with a party of 4 people. You control one of them, and again, that whole system seems to be fairly streamlined as well, and I really like the combat system. In fact, so far, the combat is really where the game is shining. It's been a little light on story so far, which is kind of weird to me, because normally with a Final Fantasy game, you pop it in and you get this really long, drawn-out intro cinematic, and it tells this grand story while the credits go, and there's not really any of that with Final Fantasy 15 so far. I don't know if it's going to be one of those games where a couple hours into it, then you get the introduction to the game, as a lot of newer games like to do. But so far, there's none of that. The story's been a little light, but it's been enough to move you forward and keep everything rolling along. But the combat is great. It's you can either do active combat, or there's like a waiting system. And I initially was going to do the waiting system because I really liked the way that worked in the old Final Fantasies, but I decided just to leave it on the default setting, and the active battle system has been very, very good. It feels like a third-person hack and slash, and you even have 4 weapon slots that you can assign either different swords to, or javelins, or even spells to if you want to. And then you can kind of warp around, and you can team up with your friends and do all sorts of specialized attacks. It's really cool so far, and I'm really looking forward to exploring how deep that combat system goes. I don't think it's going to be too deep. I think what I've seen may be what you get, with maybe a little bit more to discover, but really I think what I've seen is what you get so far, and if that's the case, I'm good with that, because I like a good third-person hack and slash, and like I said, that's how this game feels so far. Now, granted, I should say that I am viewing this game through rose-tinted spectacles, you can say, because I love Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is one of those game series, and there's not many of them out there like this for me, but this is definitely one of them where no matter what the reviews are, if they're bad, if the critics hate it and other gamers hate it, you know what? I don't care. Granted, I haven't read any reviews, so I don't know if that's how that is for this game. I imagine that the reviews are actually probably glowing for this game so far. But my point is, this is the type of game that I'm just going to buy. I don't care what people say about it. A Final Fantasy game is one that I'm going to buy and I'm going to play because I love the series. And there have been some low points here or there, but overall it's been solid, it's been fun. And Final Fantasy 15 thus far has been continuing that trend of having good, fun, story-driven games. At least I'm assuming it'll be story-driven once it opens up a little bit more, but so far it's been really, really good. And I've liked what I've experienced so far, and I can't wait to continue playing it. So, anyway, those are my first impressions of the game, just kind of my first thoughts and musings. If you haven't really thought about the game or you've been on the fence, hey, maybe it's helped sway you a little bit, or at least give you a little bit more insight into the game itself, or maybe you're just tired of my rambling. Either way, this is the end of the video, and I thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.